right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, JT, thanks very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome inside the Fan Cave. Bob Pompeani here at 412-575-2600. Andrew Fillipponi is up at 93.7 The Fan. PM team action today, every day 2 to 6. He's also up there on X at the Pony Express. Andrew, I'm going to start with the draft lottery tonight because it happened in the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're not expected to get the first overall pick, but they did. And we see, each of the last 4 years, whoever had the best odds didn't end up with that guy. And today it was supposed to be Vancouver after they had a terrible season. Jim Rutherford, in fact, looks like he's out as a president, stepping down, takes a consulting role. They already fired Patrick Alvin, their general manager. They're not going to get the number one pick. There is debate about who should be that pick. Gavin McKenna is the guy everybody talks about. He had a good season at Penn State, 51 points in 36 games, but there are others there. But still, Toronto was in that lottery, and they end up with the number one pick. Your thoughts?
Well, they picked a good year to be bad. I mean, they've had, not great seasons as far as going as deep as they would like to go in the postseason. They get eliminated in the first or second round every year. This year, their bottom fell out. Mitch Marner left for Vegas. Issues in terms of depth of that team because so much of their money is tied into just a handful of players. And it didn't work out, and lo and behold, now they're going to have the number one pick. They'll probably get Penn State's Gavin McKenna with that pick, and there's all kinds of, speculation now that Austin Matthews' days in Toronto could be numbered. And if that's the case, I wonder what Kyle Dubas will be thinking because he's got $40+ million in cap space at the moment, and we know that they have a great relationship, those two guys. So, maybe that's what he's thinking as far as easing the pain of Evgeni Malkin leaving. If Evgeni Malkin gets replaced with Austin Matthews, there's not going to be a single hockey fan in Pittsburgh who's going to complain about that.
No, and Austin Matthews is a multiple 60-goal scorer. He has the ability to do that. Doesn't seem to be happy there. I wonder what it would take in terms of a trade. And I say this because I hear the name Jason Robertson a lot. I like that guy. I really do, from Dallas. But he's a restricted free agent. If you dabble into those waters, it may cost you 4 number one picks. So if you want to make a big play, Matthews could be in line to do it. The question is, how much do you think it would cost the Penguins to get him?
A lot. I mean, I don't think, the only thing that I would say back to that is these guys have no movement clauses. And so they can really make it difficult for the team that's trading them if they insist on going to only one or two teams. And that's what makes these trades really hard, actually, is that the team might end up saying, well, okay, well, if you're only going to give us one or two options, we don't like what those teams are offering, we're just not going to trade you. And so that's the song and dance that takes place now that the NHL has given out all these no movement clauses. And Austin Matthews is one of those guys that probably does deserve to have a huge say in whether where he goes, Bob. But it can make these trade conversations very complicated when the player has so many rights in terms of where he's going to go in a deal.
Yeah, that's why I never like those things. But, some guys have partial trades, some have full trade. You got to get them to move off those trades. A lot of things in play, and it'll be a fascinating offseason. We have a question of the night brought to you by Penn West University, KDKA.com/connect. So you get to pick one of these players for the next decade. This was on social media tonight. I think it's a good question. Kevin McGonigal, Roman Anthony, Connor Griffin, J.J. Weatherholt, all young potential superstars. Of that group, which would you pick? I tend to want to think of Weatherholt as the guy I may go with, although McGonigal's very good and so is Griffin. Roman Anthony, I saw him enough last year to think he's going to be good, but I would choose those other three ahead of him. Who would you pick first?
Well, I'm obviously partial to Griffin because he's here, and also I think that he's got probably the most potential, most upside because of how young he is right now. Weatherholt, we saw him play at West Virginia, and he was really good, and before that, Mars. But he's, in theory, a lot further along in his development. And I'm not even sure with him being further along that he's that much better than Connor Griffin is right now. Connor Griffin, after he turned 20, he suddenly learned how to hit in the big leagues, and he's now got his batting average up to 260. And we've already seen the steals, and we see the extra base hits now. He's got triples. They got to eventually convert into home runs. But, yeah, I think Connor Griffin is going to have an amazing career with the Pirates and is going to go down as one of their best players ever.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. He's got a pretty good eye, too. Drew a walk tonight. And by the way, they're losing 2-0. And we'll talk about Bubba Chandler coming back because he once again issued 3 walks, although he had some bad defense behind him once again. We'll get into all that and more. We want your phone calls at 412-575-2600. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We're getting started here, KDK Plus, as well as 93.7 The Fan. So give us a call. We're here to talk to you next. Our Xfinity tweet of the night comes from Sportsnet with an 8.5% chance of winning the lottery coming in. The Toronto Maple Leafs did win it, and they will select first. Vancouver really needed it. They went from best odds to number 3, and that makes it tough to consider when you consider they had terrible season. They finished 14 points behind anyone else, and they were desperately in need of that. Maybe that's one of the reasons why Jim Rutherford, he's had a rough couple of years there, but he's going to be out as their president. So, Andrew, I want to talk about Bubba Chandler. Again, tonight we saw in the first inning, first 3 pitches, strikes. He gets rid of Perdomo quickly. I thought it was going to be a very efficient inning, something he needed. Coming off 2 straight games where he's issued a ton of walks and 9 runs and 9 innings pitched. And then all of a sudden things fall apart there. He starts to get wild, 3 walks, and then a misplay in the outfield, which I thought was more on Reynolds than Cruz, but still, miscommunication happens far too often. Your thoughts about what you've seen from him so far tonight?
Well, I think Bubba Chandler is still, such a work in progress. I think we got spoiled with Skeens. He came up and was so good right from the beginning. And then Chandler rose the ladder and was dubbed the best pitching prospect in baseball. And it's just not been really smooth sailing at all for him. Last year in the minor leagues, he did not play well, did not pitch well. Once we got pretty much to Memorial Day, and I think they were just trying to get him out of the rut he was in when he got called up. Pitched out of the bullpen, pitched as a starter. Wasn't bad at the end of last year. But he pretty much, had no competition to make the rotation. They just gave him a spot. And I think we see flashes of why there's so much promise there, but it's not consistent enough. And, the last thing you want, and, Skeens has been so good, and it looks like Hernandez will be good too, but you don't want another Tyler Glasnow situation where he's a guy that needs to leave the team to develop. But at the same time, Bob, you wonder why it's so difficult to develop this guy. He has control problems. I don't really know what his pitching approach is other than I'm just going to try to blow fastballs by everybody. I just feel like there's got to be more refining to do there and more actual pitching. And if you can't throw strikes, you're not going to be an effective major league pitcher, just bottom line. Yeah. Especially when guys aren't swinging at your pitches out of the strike zone. You're not disguising them or tricking guys. And I just think that right now, if I had to guess, when Jared Jones is ready to pitch, I think that Bubba Chandler is either going to go to the bullpen or go back to the minor leagues.
That could be a good assessment.
Because Majinski has been better than him.
Majinski has been better. But I will say this. The other thing about throwing 100, guys know what that looks like now. So they can foul off a lot of those pitches. Sometimes they make contact if they're fat enough with those pitches. So the 100-mile-an-hour thing, it's good to have, but you've got to do better. And I think perhaps being on a same staff as Paul Skeens will help him. Maybe he's going to, be a sponge around him, try to learn some of the things that Paul Skeens does. That certainly cannot hurt his potential development. But, yeah, he's got to get better than what he is so far. All right, we got a lot of people on the lines. Let's get to it, beginning with our number 1 Cochrane Go One Better caller of the night, and that would be David in Findlayville tonight. Hello, David.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, can you put yourself in Kyle Dubas's position right now? So Malkin is an unrestricted free agent. Would you keep him or try to trade for him or just let him go?
Well, you can't trade for him.
Or Letang. How about Letang also? Well,
Letang you can trade, but he has to agree to it. I just don't think they're going to do that. And quite frankly, they don't have people to replicate what he does. And I'm talking about it in a positive way. I don't know many guys. They have guys down there who should be ready by next year. Harrison Brunick was a guy who was close to making it this year. And they have others. But as far as Malkin is concerned, man, Kyle Dubas didn't say much all season long about it. It was Malkin doing all the talking, Andrew. So he was the guy who was saying, hey, I'd love to be here. Yeah, maybe 2 years even. And he hasn't gotten much back in return. So that, to me, makes it sound like he may not be in their plans.
One of the things I've been thinking about with this is, do we have another situation brewing where new ownership gets involved. You know, I think Fenway Sports Group was heavily involved in what happened with Ron Hextall and Evgeni Malkin and keeping him around the last time we went through this. Not wanting to break up the big three, wanted to keep a fan favorite around. And you know, Josh Yohe wrote an article today that made it sound again like if the Hoffman family had its way, Evgeni Malkin might remain a Penguin because of what he does in terms of getting people to the arena, getting people to watch games and things like that. So, you know, does that kind of interjection, it's their prerogative, they own the team, do they do that again, Bob? Does that happen again? And Kyle Dubas is basically, if he wants to work for the Hoffmans, he's got to do what they want, or he could just say, you know, I don't think he's going to quit over something like that. But, you know, all I'm saying is that to me is something that could alter Kyle Dubas's plan, which is to move on from Evgeni Malkin and get younger.
But I think even the Hoffman Group, I think all of the Fenway Group and the Hoffman Group both look at Kyle Dubas as a shining star, somebody who is doing the right things. He had a hell of a year this past year. He did. He didn't get off to a great start with some of these contracts he signed. He got out from under them. I think they look at him like he's in control. He'll make the right decisions, and it is 4 years later. So that's another component to this that doesn't bode well for Malkin. But we'll see. I mean, if he stays around at a good price, I don't think there's any problem. He still is a pretty good hockey player, averaging a point a game at his age. Can he do it again? You know, you hope so. But even if you get a reduced price and a guy who's out there and giving you 20 goals and 60 points, not a bad predicament to be in.
Well, Bob, I agree with you on everything you said there about, Kyle Dubas and his stock rising this year, but, you also have Sid. And Sidney Crosby has made it very, very clear and very obvious that he wants Evgeni Malkin to stick around. So, how about that if you're ownership too? Who breaks that tie? The GM wants one thing. The best player in your, since Mario, who's brought your franchise 3 cups, who knows a lot about the sport, he wants Malkin back. And if you get rid of Malkin, how much is that going to alienate or irritate Sid? Will that be an easy thing for him to get over? I wonder about that too.
Yeah, that's probably true, but Sidney obviously is partial to his players too. He'd like Rust and Raquel. At some point as the general manager, though, you know what you're in, and he's tried to deal with the rebuilding part of this in a way that still doesn't disrupt what they're going on. Tough wire to walk on, and so I don't know. I don't know how much of that comes back. One of these guys is going to be traded at some point. They have to. If they're going to make a move, especially a bigger move, some of these guys are going to have to go. Let's go out to Jerry in Franklin. Jerry, you're up next. Go ahead.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Andrew. Hey, early in the year, I know a lot of people talked about they were concerned at Gonzalez at third base and whether he'd be able to carry the weight of that. And I think he's done a pretty good job there, and he's driven in some pretty important runs. I was wondering what you guys' assessment was of that situation.
Should be his job for me every day right now. I know that Don Kelly's partial to Triolo. I know that he's a better fielder than Gonzalez, but the bat doesn't even compare, Andrew. Until that changes, I'm sticking with him.
One of the things that really is just, part of this equation too, which you don't really think about that much, is Brandon Lau's numbers against lefties are pathetic.
That's why.
And I know we had that huge controversy.
For 3 different times with York, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I know he hit the home run in that one game, and that's what made the decision so crazy to take him out against Washington. But the numbers are just horrific. I think he's 5 for 35 against left-handed pitching. And so when that happens, I think Gonzalez plays second like tonight, and you put Triolo at third. But it's just, it really is something that you have a guy that's such a good hitter and might be an all-star this year and might be their best hitter, Bob, but you platoon him. You don't put him in the lineup against lefties because the numbers are just so atrocious.
And he still managed to hit 31 home runs last year despite all of that. And you're right, he's a good hitter. But those kind of things, you would have thought someone of his stature would have figured it out by now, like Cruz has seemingly figured it out going against left-hand pitching. John is in Ford City, and right now he's on the sports call. Hey, John.
Yeah, how you doing, guys?
Good. What's up?
I just thought of NBA City. Like, a lot of people don't talk about NBA, but I'm a big NBA fan. And this OKC team is ridiculous. Like, the way they reload every year with all these draft picks. They got all these guys, like, no names that are just stepping up constantly. Like, they're unbeatable. Dynasty's about to be happening.
Yeah,
I'm LeBron.
I watched the beginning of that Lakers game, and LeBron came out and had like 8 of their first 15 points. They had a lead, and all of a sudden it turned into a 10-point deficit. I don't know what it is now, but OKC, the thing I love about them is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, their MVP of the league, maybe twice now, he just loves watching all these guys come off the bench and play. He's a contributor. He helps them out. They play like 11 guys. Not many NBA teams do that, Andrew. They do it well. And if they don't win, don't be surprised if they use some of these things to go out and get Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee.
Well, I think they will win. I don't think it's good for the NBA in that, look, it's not at all a slight against Oklahoma City. I don't think it's about the market size whatsoever. I just think SGA is not a really fun. I don't really like watching him play. And the reason why I say that is because that's all he does. He drives not to make a basket. He drives to get a foul called. And to me, like that's not the point of the sport. The point of the sport is not to win a game because you get the other team in foul trouble and beat them that way. It's to actually score and make plays. And it just seems like every time he dribbles the ball to the basket and penetrates, it's to try to get a foul. And I just wish there could be something that could be done about that. I guess, if you don't like it, stop him.
Yeah,
but
that's my answer.
It's just frustrating. It's just frustrating when you watch a game and you know that's all he's trying to do, Bob.
Well, I thought at the beginning of this game they didn't call some fouls. He expected them to be called, and they weren't called. So, yeah, I get it. You know what? He's going to try to get a step on you, and if you have to foul him, he's a good foul shooter. He's going to take advantage of that. But I understand what you're saying. But, man, they come at you with a lot of different plays. And I think because guys like Williams missed a lot of time this year, last year was Chet Holmgren missed a lot of time, a lot of guys got to play. And when they got to play, they got to realize they're pretty good. And so that, expansion of their bench occurred. We got to take a break here. Come back with more. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We're live. KDKA Plus and 93.7 The Fan. Avalanche 5, Wild 2. Colorado leads the series 2-0. Flyers are down 0-2 in their series. Andrew, do you see them digging out from that one?
No, I don't. I think Carolina's going to get to the conference final. I would like to think we're going to see a couple upsets here, but I'm having a hard time picking them right now, especially with how Colorado looks against Minnesota again tonight, Bob.
I like Montreal against Buffalo in that series. You?
Do not. I think the Ducks maybe come back and beat Vegas because I think their shooting can get to that goaltending there.
We're out of time, Andrew. Thanks as always. Appreciate it. We'll see you again tomorrow night. Thank you.